Welcome back, everybody. Alright, now I'm going to be explaining a few things. It's going to be somewhat technical. I'm only self-educated, so I have to say I understand quite a bit for being self-educated, but there are things I don't know and I don't understand. This here is what I call the precursor material. If it would be anything, this would be the closest to an achondritic meteorite that this is. I believe it to be a carbonaceous chondrite type of meteorite from like a C-class asteroid, which technically I believe carbon comes from comets from deep space, at least any unmodified carbon, because that's where it's cold, and the outside will end up being modified obviously during the actual entrance into our atmosphere through this thermosphere and all of that junk, you know. Thermosphere is the hottest layer, so that's what you have to worry about in our atmosphere. All that and pressures and junk like that. But I believe this to be calcium carbonate and a form of carbon, like unmodified. This right here, my best educated guess is some sort of graphite. This stuff actually floats on water. It's extremely light. I've talked to a professor, but they did very, very, very little to actually look at this stuff. They just kind of looked at it, batted an eye, and looked away. So I wasn't going to really take that because I spent a good 5 years researching into this myself, and I'm not exactly, I don't know, stupid. So they were just being kind of lazy, in my opinion. I don't blame them, though. For them, they can't stick a magnet on it, and it doesn't have an iron and nickel ratio content. That can't be a meteorite, which doesn't make any sense in general, because there are many meteorites that don't even have iron or nickel in them, like carbonaceous chondrites, different achondrite type of meteorites. The argument is also that these are vesicular. Vesicular means that there's little air pockets that formed while it was cooling, where gases was escaping ultimately. But they're trying to say that can't happen in space, which is really stupid because there are plenty of places in the universe. Plus, I mean, the laws of probability would actually imply that there are places out there that it would happen. It's just a matter of improbability of actually finding the item here, you know? So basically, yeah. Here's another example of that kind of like super light material, like floats. I don't know exactly what it is. Their definition of what it was basically in like the post stage that I showed them. I've even showed them a piece like this, is that it was solidified dirt, which in a sense, maybe, I wouldn't even argue that some of what they're saying isn't even true, but it's a matter of how it got here and everything like that. So let's see, that can go over there. Then there's this. This is basically like a post-state material, one of them. I don't know how to explain the differences other than maybe different parts of the actual meteoroid before it exploded. Let's say deeper within, different forms of modification, things like that. Or it could have been a conglomerate type of meteorite, which actually just had different types of meteorite material within it. You never really know. This stuff exists in space. They want to act like it doesn't, but it definitely does. Then there's these gemmy type of pieces. And some of these things actually kind of have a fusion crust. You can kind of see it. It's not like your typical kind of fusion crust, but what you have to understand is that when you're dealing with chemistry, different elements within the stone that are being modified are going to have a different color effect on the surface. So, like, let's say, for example, I've been kind of, like, theorizing that, let's say, a carbonaceous chondrite, when it comes into our atmosphere, why would it have a black, let's see, fusion crust? It doesn't make any sense to me, simply because when you look at a piece of charcoal, and like, I can't explain the exact chemical reaction because I'm not that bright on the subject, to be honest with you. But the chemical reaction on charcoal, for example, it leaves the outside white. It leaves an ashy type of color. I don't know. So to me, it's just carbon burns in a different color. Maybe I'm just being silly, overthinking that one. I won't doubt that it might be happening. Anyways, but when you actually look at these under like a microscope, they have microcrystalline structures. If you see, it still has the same black material, same white material. They're trying to call it glass, even though it doesn't have the same crystal structure as, or it has a crystal structure, and it doesn't have the same fracture plane as glass. Like, different materials fracture differently, like, say, if you hit them with a hammer or something like that. So they're just, as far as I can tell, really doing no work on any of this stuff. Plus, some of these things have different chemical compositions found in them that are pretty rare. You can just tell by looking at it, like bismuth, things like that. That wouldn't be commonly found in here. And I have found iron flakes in this stuff. It's not very common, but I don't know. When you look at the moon, for example, I mean, there's iron on the moon, but there's not a lot of iron on the moon. The main difference is that there's not a lot of carbon on the moon, as far as I know of. So, yeah, not likely from the moon. But it would be cool. I don't know. I've had a lot of different pieces. These are just kind of explaining some of what I have so far. And then we have, let's see, this one I think will give me some of the, no, it's not really putting the colors out there well. Then there's this. This kind of explains kind of more like the conglomerate that I was explaining about. You have that material. You have evidence of iron ore or rust. My bad, my camera's horrible. And I'm not very good at making videos, so. And then you have this, which I believe to not necessarily be a form of peridot, but it's in the kind of chemical composition, that kind of family. I don't know what to call it. I don't know. I've been studying meteorites and gems and rocks for about a good, I think, 8 years now. I've come a long way, but I don't know. I won't pay anyone to learn this stuff. It's something I enjoy. I'm not going to ruin it. Same type of material. Again, different type of color, different kind of composition. All found within the same strewn field type of area. Strewn field is ultimately the area in which a meteorite falls, and yeah, well, ultimately, but when you break that down, what a strewn field is, it's the actual area when a meteorite breaks up. The smaller pieces will actually fall farther back because they have less momentum carrying them, and the larger pieces will go farther. So yeah, basically, when you're talking about a strewn field, you have a certain area that you're going to look for rocks, which can actually be a very big area. Like, I think there's more of this rock out here, definitely. I just am the only one that's seen it and has bothered to look for it. This stuff I've been showing you guys is another piece that I've been finding that's within it sometimes, but normally off to the side. It floats on water. This piece particularly is about 3 grams, which is quite light. Again, floats on water. The only piece of material that I know of that floats on water, I believe, is pumice. So it says something about it. Plus, if you can actually get a look in here, which I don't know if I can, right there, kind of, I believe that to be a form of graphite, which would be the precursor to diamonds as well, like the rest of these things, carbon. And I have put this under a nano, I believe these to be nano diamonds ultimately, as much as people will argue with me left and right, I'm sure. AI has even agreed with me to some extent, and it told me to go talk to somebody with a scanning electron microscope, which is my next goal. And this right here, I think is the last one I'll show you for now. And then I'll explain why I believe, and explain how I found them. And yeah, so basically this is one piece that I have never actually broken. It still has its full fusion crust except for that little part, but it also lets you see that little bit inside too, that it still has that, I don't know if it's a carbon mixture. I would think silicate even, maybe on some of them. But yeah, anyways, that's enough of the stones. Alright, so basically now my reasoning is where they were found. They were found in a strewn field pattern with over the matter of, well, the farthest piece I found is about 3 miles away. I'm not going to count that one though because I don't exactly know what to think about that one. It does look similar, but there's a difference. And I've even admitted slag can look a lot like this stuff, but there are definitely chemical differences. There are key differences in between a piece of slag to a piece of gemstone. So, yeah, I don't know. You can research it yourself. I don't know. Anyways, beyond that, the area where they were found, like, me and my dad alone heard pieces that hit our house. Most meteorites, like in the Ann Hodges case, would go right through your roof and just, like... But these things are particularly light, if you haven't noticed, for the most part. So... depending, I couldn't recover it, but my dad and me heard both on 2 different occasions something hit our house, and it was around the same time where I basically hadn't been able to walk for a while. I don't know if you guys have known this, but I lost part of my foot, So I was unable to walk for a good while, and then I started recovering. Well, actually, this was when I could still walk, but it hurt so bad that I couldn't fucking walk. Yeah, so I went up and I started finding these things, and that was basically what would have been after the winter. And the best I've been able to do by the situation is that they were basically piled up by a snowplow. Yeah, I don't know. That's the best I've been able to think, because they were put into different areas and they were dispersed in several areas, but there was like a large amount of them in one area that had been put where they would, like, let's say, plow up snow. So that was what told me they probably fell over the winter. And they weren't rusted yet, which is a pretty good indicator that they're pretty fresh, because our atmosphere will eat away at iron very fast. Chemical compositions, the amount of materials, the fracture plane on the different materials, the variety of them, the fact that you can actually have a floating stone. There aren't floating stones out there, not really. This is a microcrystalline structure. It means that there's a whole bunch of little tiny crystals in there that are loosely packed in there, which is why they can float, because it has a lighter density than the water, which isn't usual. Yeah, so basically, I'll probably add more later. I think for now, I think you guys kind of get where I'm coming from. It's just really out of place, and it's harder to not explain it being there than it is to just sit there and say, oh, it's, no, that's not. It's like, well, explain it then, because, I mean, you're not even going to run a test on the damn shit to tell me exactly what it is. I don't know. I know what it is. I've actually talked to the physicist before, a very bright man. He was a professor from a different, well, kind of a madman in a sense, but that's besides the point. He was very bright, and he knew what he was talking about, so, yeah. Ultimately, I believe that these could very well be meteorites. I'm not sure if they will ever be verified that way, at least in my lifetime, but I'm going to keep researching them, and I'm going to prove it to whatever degree I can, because that's kind of how it goes in science. A lot of the time, you're never going to get credit for the shit you do. Look at Tesla. He changed our world so much, and I don't mean fucking Elon Musk, the fucking DeLorean wannabe, fucking ugly ass Cybertruck. I'm just saying, nothing against the guy. I really don't hate him. I just get kind of nervous about how we're handing control at all over to someone who's not even actually like a member of our nation. I don't know. He can't be our president, then why should he be able to be? I don't know. He has enough power. I guess that's my point. He doesn't need more. Anyways, I think, at least for now, until I realize I forgot some crap, that should be it. I hope you guys have a good day. Hopefully you learned something from this and I didn't just rant on horribly. Alright, have a nice day.